right? As much as the question is not the one that you will be writing your assignment with, but as I said, we'll use my example. You must be referring to your assignment topic, okay? So as I'm using this example, when I'm talking about the topic, you will be saying my topic, using the topic that the lecturer gave you, okay? So you should be able to understand the question, right? What the question asks you to do, the question which is the title of your assignment, okay? So because of today's question, which is to provide an explanation of modernization theory and decolonial theory and the context in which they emerged, we're also going to cover the key theories, which is modernization theory as well as decolonial theories, okay? So you must check what your assignment question is. But for today's session, since our assignment topic is to provide an explanation of modernization theory and decolonial theory and the context in which they emerged, we'll also cover the theories. So a review of modernization and decolonial theories from the study guide. Okay, so these are actually things that we have already done. You will see as we go. So I'm sure even your assignment topic is based on whatever we have covered in all the units, right? So you will be able to go back and refer and say, okay, we have covered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I remember 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you should also be able to check the structure of your assignment, how to structure your essay or your assignment from the introduction to conclusion. Okay, so we'll cover that as well. We'll also cover academic integrity, which is a guide to referencing and to avoid plagiarism. Okay, so these are the things we'll cover today. All right, so the first thing you should ask yourself when you get an assignment topic, right? You have to ask yourself question, what is the main goal of this assignment? Okay. Once you ask yourself that, you have to find an answer to say, okay, the main goal of this assignment is to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so each time you get an assignment topic, ask yourself first, why? What is the main goal of this assignment? Okay, so the main goal of today's topic or this assignment is to demonstrate your understanding, okay, of 2 key development theories, which is the modernization and decolonial theories, by explaining them and their historical context. You remember what we're explaining or what we did or engaged on in our previous sessions. So, so the main goal is it for you to demonstrate your understanding of what you learned, right? Of these 2 key development theories by explaining them as well as their historical context. Okay? So this requires you to critically engage with the course material, which is your study guide, right? Because it covers those 2 theories. So this requires you to engage critically so with the course material and present your arguments in a clear, organized essay. Okay? So now that you know modernization theory, you know decolonial theory, you need to now show it through an essay. What do you understand about decolonial theory? What do you understand about modernization theory? What's the history of these 2 theories? Okay, so you need to present your arguments in a clear manner, an organized way. Okay, so as I said, our topic is to provide an explanation of modernization theory and the colonial theory, right? And the context in which they emerged. Okay, so before you start writing, it's important to break down the question, right? Or the topic, and understand what is it that is expected from you. So you should be able to break it down before you even start writing. Okay, so your tutorial letter, remember I said we'll be referring to your tutorial letter 301. It emphasizes the importance of understanding action words, right? So what is action words? In this case, action words is the key, is to explain and be able to provide an explanation. So the key action words here are to explain, right? Because you will be explaining. So it's to explain and to provide an explanation. Okay, so these two words require you to go beyond just defining the theories. Okay, to say, okay, modernization theory is about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The colonial theory is about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you need to go beyond that. You must also elaborate on them, okay, by giving reasons as well as examples. That's how you will show the understanding, your understanding of the two theories. Okay. So with regards to, remember I said action words equals explain and provide an explanation, whereby you go beyond just defining the two, right? So when we explain, now we are going to make something clear. To explain is to make something clear or easy to understand by describing or giving more information about it. Okay, so you need to present the information in a logical, systematic, and organized manner. You can't write an assignment whereby the information is all over, right? So you need to know the structure to say, okay, I start with 1, followed by 2, 3, 4, 5, just like that. So it needs to be presented in a logical manner, in a logical, systematic, and organized manner. Okay? Even if you wrote things that are correct in your assignment, but if it's not in a logical manner, your lecturer will just give you 0 because there's no logic. So your assignment needs to connect to say, okay, I've read this paragraph, now I'm going to the next paragraph. Okay, so you also need to be able to know how to connect words when you're moving down, explaining your modernization and decolonial theories, as well as presenting your arguments. So you need to be able to show that, oh, I know how to connect from 1 to 2. I don't just start a new sentence that just comes out of nowhere. So it needs to be logically so. It needs to be presented in a logical manner. Okay? And then with regards to the context of emergence, right? You need to now, because now our topic is based on modernization and decolonial theories. You need to now show where and why these theories came into being. Where do they come from? When were they developed? You understand? So you need to explain the historical and intellectual environments that led to their formation. Okay? You remember we spoke about this. So you need to be able to say, okay, my topic is about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my topic is about modernization and decolonial theories, as well as their context in which they emerged, right? So I need to now check their history. when did modernization theory came about, and when did the colonial theory came about. So you need to check their history on when were they formed. Okay. And as I said, your essay should have a clear and systematic flow. So it needs to have a logical structure. You need to convince the reader of your understanding. Okay? So now, your tutorial letter, okay, which is your guide for how your essay should be, how you should reference your essay, or how you should reference your assignment, how you should reference your authors and all that. According to that, okay, according to the tutorial letter, what is the key sign of a successful assignment? What does it want from you? So you need to check. You also need to go and read that tutorial letter. It's not too long, right? It's not too long, so it won't be tiring for you to go through it. So please make sure you go through it before you even submit your assignment to understand everything. Okay? So you need to be able to know what is the key sign of a successful assignment. Because if you don't know the key sign of a successful assignment, it means you just submit something that doesn't make sense. Or maybe it may make sense to you, but it doesn't make sense to how your lecturer wants your assignment to be. Okay, so you need to make sure that you go through that tutorial letter and check what is the key sign of a successful assignment. So a key sign of a successful assignment is that you show that you have done, is that you show what you have done, right? And you should also show your understanding of the required reading. You cannot do an assignment without reading, right? You need to do proper reading for each and every topic you are given. You need to go through it, and then you go to the library or you go online to check the journals that support your topic, okay? And do some reading to say, okay, this topic is about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What does this scholar say about modernization theory? What does this scholar say about the colonial theory? What is the difference between the two? Okay? So a key sign of a successful assignment is that you show that you have done and you understand the required reading, and that your essay, your assignment is compiled in a logical manner. I will keep repeating that. Okay? So that's how you score marks. These little things adds up. Ne? You may think, oh, okay, it doesn't matter. I just forgot 1, 2, 3. That's how you lose marks. You cannot afford to lose marks. Even that 1 mark is a lot. You can't afford to lose a mark, right? You can't say, as long as I get 50. No, that's not a good way of thinking. Passing Kamadoda score, it's not a good thing. So you need to aim high to say, I need to check everything that I've done, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What does the lecturer expect from me? What does the lecturer expect from my assignment? They expect 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have followed everything that they want, and I'm confident that I'm going to get good marks, right? Back to our topic. Our topic, remember, is about what? Our topic is about providing an explanation of modernization theory and decolonial theory and their context in which they emerged, right? So with modernization theory, let's start with the modernization theory. Your study guide presented as one of the earliest development theories, right? It emerged in the context of the post-war era. You remember, we spoke about this. So it emerged in the context of the post-World War era, okay? World War II era, when newly independent third world countries were seen as what? They were seen as needing to catch up with the West. You remember we spoke about this. So the theory's foundational idea was that economic growth and industrialization like that are seen with Marshall Plan in Europe. So they will trickle down and lead to development everywhere. And that's when the colonial theory said, that doesn't make sense. Maybe the colonial theory will do a better job. Okay? So with modernization theory, because now we're dealing with two theories, we'll start with modernization theory by checking when was it developed or when was it formed. It was formed after World War II and Cold War, right? So that you have seen. You also need to check who wrote this history. So you need to check and cite, okay, to say, okay, it was formed when, and then you include citation, because you didn't know that. You read it somewhere. Somebody had to write that. Who was that person? You need to acknowledge that. Okay? So now, the success of the American Marshall Plan in rebuilding Europe. Okay? The modernization theory was inspired by the Marshall Plan in rebuilding Europe. Okay, so now, why am I talking about these things? The context of emergence, the history of it. We said it was formed after World War II and Cold War. It was inspired by Marshall Plan to rebuild Europe, right? You're getting these ideas and you're jotting them down, right? And then the newly independent state expected catch up with the West, and then it was made to prevent the spread of communism and open new markets, right? So this is the history of modernization theory. But then what are the core tenets? What are the core tenets? So development in modernization theory is a linear process whereby traditional societies adopt Western values and institutions to become modern, right? So you don't need to write a lot of things. For each topic, you just need to get a few ideas that you will work on to build your body, ne? But we'll get to that. Right now, we're checking the history, the coordinates, as well as the key question for both of these theories, since they built our topic, right? So it also says that the benefits of modernization theory trickle down to all. So we have done this, right? You remember all these, but now when we were doing our previous sessions, we're talking about a whole lot of things. We spoke about modernization theory for so long, but right now you're just getting a snippets of each just to build your body of your assignment. Okay, so the benefits of industrialization will trickle down to the poor. That's one of the key focus of modernization theory. But then we said it was inspired by the Marshall Plan in rebuilding Europe. Maybe you can ask yourself, why was the Marshall Plan a key influence on modernization theory? This will be included in my body, right? So why was the Marshall Plan so influential? It was influential for the success in boosting the industrial production and economic growth in post-war Europe. Okay, that led the theorists as well as the institutions to believe that a similar approach could be used to develop newly independent countries, right? So now we have gotten the context or the history of modernization theory. We have gotten the key focus of modernization theory. We have also asked ourselves, why was the Marshall Plan so influential, right? Now we have gotten the whole thing about modernization theory, the focus and all that. We're going to move to the colonial theory. Okay, we need to do the same because these are two different theories. We're going to get the history, we're going to get the coordinates or the focus, right, of the colonial theory as well. So now, as we move to the colonial theories, which is a much more recent perspective. Remember, we said modernization theory came before the colonial theory, ne? So the decolonial theory is a much more recent perspective or recent theory, and it is a radical critique of not only modernization but the entire concept of development as a Western construct. You remember that it came because modernization theory was not working. Okay, so now what needs to come to your mind is to say, if they formed the colonial theory after modernization theory, it means they were critiquing modernization theory, right? So now is modernization versus the colonial theory, the difference between the two. So your assignment needs to cover that as well. Okay? So, as I said, the decolonial theory was formed as a radical critique for modernization theory, as well as the entire concept of development. It didn't agree with that. Okay? So, the colonial theory emerged from the critiques of post-development thinkers, okay, who argued that development itself was a system of power and knowledge that was imposed on the global south. Okay, so this theory insists on challenging Western values and prioritizing local, non-Western perspectives. Okay, which or maybe on what constitute a good life and positive change. So we need to decolonize our mind. We need to decolonize education. We need to decolonize 1, 2, 3. So we need to change the way we think and all that. Okay. So with regards to the history, I've touched a bit on the history. It was formed because it's criticizing modernization theory, right? So the critique of failed Western development project, it said no, whatever that modernization perspectives were put on the table are not working. So that's the first critique, right? And it grew out of post-development theory, which argued that development was a Western ideology that is imposed on global South. Okay, so it's not for Africans. That's a Western ideology. Okay, Africans need to come up with ways in which they can develop themselves rather than following Western ideologies. All right. So these are the historical context of the colonial theory. And then it responds to the ongoing dominance of Western ideas, institutions, as well as knowledge systems. Okay. So you remember, we even gave examples of our courts in some of our African courts. The judges and the lawyers, they still wear those white wigs and all that. So the way in which people were colonized back then, it's still dominant in their countries today, right? So the colonial theory was formed to for people to stop, or for countries to stop with that mindset, to say, start your own thing. You can't keep wearing white wigs when you can start with your new uniform. You can't always teach classes in English only. What about your own languages? You understand? You can't do 1, 2, 3. So you need to decolonize everything. So this is the context of emergence. This is why it was formed. Okay? But then, what are the key areas or the key focus of the colonial theory? The core tenets. So the key areas or the key focus for this is that development is a ruin in the intellectual landscape, right? And a mental structure that needs to be dismantled. Okay, so its focus is that people need to have a new way of thinking, decolonize your mind. You can't be thinking like that. You need to decolonize your mind. You understand? Everything that was done during colonization, it cannot continue. And it starts where? It starts in the mind. So it says that mental structure needs to be dismantled. Okay, that is focused. That once we start with the mind, we'll be able to change a lot of things. Okay? It also rejects the idea that Western knowledge is superior to traditional practices. You remember when you were writing and also engaging during our session to say, but our traditional medicines work. Some of these traditional medicines, or these pharmaceutical companies have, they're using the same roots or whatsoever, and then they name it in an English word. So it's actually still the same. So they use the same roots, like your aloe vera. They use your aloe vera and then they name it in nice words and say, okay, your traditional aloe doesn't work like ours. So you thinking, okay, the one that is planted at my house, it won't work well because it doesn't have a labeling, it doesn't have nice container. Okay, so it rejects that idea that Western knowledge is superior to traditional practices. Okay, that's the key focus on the colonial theory. It calls for thinking from the South and respecting cultural diversity. Okay, like Africa, we have rich cultures in Africa, right? So it calls for thinking from the South and respecting culture. We shouldn't throw away our culture. We need to embrace our culture, each and every person. We're like in South Africa, we're a rainbow nation, right? So we need to embrace our culture. In Africa, we're also a rainbow continent because there's so many rich cultures within our African continent. So we need to embrace that. We shouldn't throw away our culture. Okay, so that is the key focus of decolonization. So it also focuses on seeking to create a more just global system by challenging Western dominance. Okay, so these are the core tenets or the core focus of the colonial theory. Okay, decolonizing the mind, calling for local diverse perspectives rather than thinking, okay, everything that comes from Europe is powerful. We need to also think about what is it that we have here in our land that we can use, rather than thinking we need America, we need this, we need Europe to save us, you understand? So we need to also think of our local things that are here, to say we can use this to better our life, we can use this to develop ourselves. Okay. So why was I focusing on the historical context as well as the coordinates for both the theories? Is because of the topic. Okay. So even for you, the topic that you are given, you need to make sure that you check what does the topic say and how do I build my assignment body by getting all these, the history, the key focus of what you are given. Okay, because I couldn't build my assignment body without checking the history of modernization theory and the history of the colonial theory. When was it formed? Without checking the coordinates or the focus of modernization theory, the coordinates of the colonial theory, I couldn't build the history. So I needed to build the history. And me getting all these ideas, I will be checking also the scholars that supports each and every idea. And that's how I build the body. Okay. All right. Now, you will ask yourself, how does the colonial theory challenge modernization theory? Remember, the two uh, uh, the two theories are different. Okay, so now since modernization was not working, they formed the colonial theory. So it was already challenging that. So now is modernization theory versus the colonial theory. So modernization theory, to answer that, you can say modernization theory proposes that developing countries should emulate the West to achieve progress, right? While the colonial theory rejects the entire premise, it rejects the entire idea. It argues that the very idea of development is a Western contract or is a Western ideology that ignores and devalues local knowledge, right? And it calls for a new non-Western centric approach to change. So for this topic that I've came up with, it's very easy to differentiate the two, right? But you need to make sure that as you are differentiating the two, you are clear. You don't hit around the bush. You remember when we were engaging and I asked you a question maybe, and then you were answering, you're engaging me. I could hear sometimes that you are talking, you are making sense, but you are bringing more things, even things that was not asked by the question. So when you're writing an assignment, you need to make sure that you're answering the question, whatever that you are putting down in your assignment, whatever that you're putting down in the body of your assignment is answering the question. Do not go haywire, whereby the person that's reading your assignment get lost and they end up saying, okay, let me go back. I didn't understand what you wrote here. I didn't understand what you wrote here. So you need to make sure that you answer the question. You don't answer things that were not asked. Okay? You don't talk about things that were not asked. So you answer the question. Even your examples in your body, you have to be answering the question. Okay? And that's how you gain marks. Remember, as I said, all these small things that you tend to ignore sometimes, that's how we lose marks. Ne? So all these small things, they add up. And then you ignore one, you ignore two, and then by the time you're done with your assignment and submitting, you have ignored so many things that costed you 20 marks. So all these small things add up. So you need to be able to answer the question. Okay? Any question?
I have a question with regards to the body. You just mentioned now, when we explain things, we shouldn't go off topic. Um, I'm not sure if you do know the topics that we were given for our essays. but the one I chose was question 2. Um, it was about the United Nations and the agencies that the United Nations has. And basically, in the body, we had to elaborate on the different agencies and who they are and what they do and so on. And I just want to know, with regards to the topic of not going off topic and giving examples, how should we go about doing that? Should we then give examples of maybe what they do and what they did in a year, or what they do for certain countries, without going off topic? I'm just a little afraid that my example isn't going to like coordinate or be in line with what I'm speaking about in my paragraphs.
Okay. Yes. I wish I got your topic, right, of the assignment, so that we talk of something that we see, so that I can give real questions. Okay. But it doesn't matter. Whatever topic that you were given is already things that we spoke about. It's covered in one of the learning units, right? What do I mean by not going off topic? Sometimes when we answer questions, right? Even when we engaging, we tend to speak of things that don't answer the question, whereby the person that asks you says, okay, you were talking about sustainable development. Why are you now talking about certain things that don't align with sustainable development? So once someone that's marking your paper say, okay, this doesn't make sense now, I have to go back, that's how you lose marks. You understand? So even your example, Singram, since you spoke of examples, when you give examples, you need to give examples of that particular question that you chose. You cannot use certain examples that don't align with the question. You understand? If you're talking about deforestation, you need to give examples of deforestation. Okay, you need to give examples of what does deforestation do? What does it mean, in our country? Like mining, how is it destroying the earth and all that? You understand? You can't talk about certain things that don't align with deforestation, and then now you come back to say, as I was saying, deforestation is this and this and that. That's how you lose marks. So the questions that you're going to use, you remember when we were doing our class, I was using real-time examples, right? So that the person that is marking your assignment can also say, okay, this is a development studies student, meaning they are aware of their surroundings, right? They know what's happening in their world, in their surrounding, in their country. So give examples of Africa, give examples of South Africa, right? Things that are happening in our country, things that are happening in your community, things that are happening in our continent. Focus on that. Do not give examples that someone is like, when did this happen? So always use real-time examples. Okay. So your assignment structure. Someone will say, okay, you gave us a topic, you were explaining modernization and decolonial theory. But then how do I structure my assignment? We're even talking about your assignment needs to be structured. It needs to follow a structured, logical manner. How do I do that? You can't just start an assignment as if you brainstorming. Of course, you will brainstorm, right? In your own desk, before you start an assignment, as I said, you're going to get snippets of what this assignment is about, the history of that topic, okay? And then the body will be built on the key focus of the topic, ne? But now when you start writing, the first thing you need to know is that your assignment has to be structured. What are the things that are required for my assignment? Okay, because if your assignment is not structured, if this is missing in your assignment, you lose marks. Ne? So your tutorial letter also is very specific on how to structure your essay. Ne? So following this structure is important for a good mark. Remember, you can't afford to lose even 1 mark. So the assignment should be the tutorial letter should be a general guide on how you can collect all these marks. Okay? So while a standard essay is or maybe I wanted to ask you actually, before I say this, I wanted to ask you. Normally, a standard essay should be maybe between 10 pages or so, right? It should be between 10 pages or so. Did your lecturer give you the number of pages that you need to include in your assignment? Do you know?
Yes, it's 3 to 5 pages.
It's 3 to 5 pages. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's not even long. That's doable. Okay. Singram, you had something to say?
No, I was going to say the same thing.
Okay. So, since the assignment shouldn't be long, right? You can't even afford to lose any mark. If you were writing maybe 10 pages, you would be like, yo, I got lost maybe on the 6th page, on the 7th page, because normally assignments are like 10 pages and all that, right? But since it's just a few pages, you have to make sure that you get 100% for this, right? So how do we get 100%? You need to focus on your general guide. And the first thing you do is to check the cover page and table of contents. You can't have you cannot submit your assignment without a cover page, because how will the lecturer know your name, right? How will they know that, okay, this is Danisa's assignment? Okay, even though they haven't seen you, but they need to know that this is Danisa's assignment so that they can record the marks. So if you submit your assignment without that, now your lecturer has to guess. That's how you lose marks. You understand? After you cover your assignment with a cover page, you need to include a table of contents, right? You can't write an assignment without including a table of contents, because your lecturer needs to see that, okay, this assignment was written logically. So if you don't include the table of contents, it means you didn't even structure your assignment correct. You know, there's no need for the lecturer to even read your assignment, because what are they going to read about if they don't see the structure of your assignment? So these two are required. And then you need to also include introduction. As much as when we start with the assignment, we're going to talk about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You need to have what do you call it? You need to have a heading that says introduction. Okay, you need to have a section, a heading that say introduction. You need to introduce the development theory. So since our assignment today is development theory, versing modernization theory as well as their formation, we're going to introduce the two, right? So in the introduction, we're going to define development and the importance of the theory. Okay? And then and by doing so, by defining what development is and why these theories are important, it shouldn't be so long. Your introduction, you see, is 3 pages. So your introduction shouldn't be a page, because if it's a page, what else are you going to write? You know, it means your assignment will be longer than that. So since your lecturer specified that your assignment should be this much pages, you need to make sure that you keep to those pages. Okay, so your introduction should be concise and straightforward. So for our today's assignment, we'll begin with a broad statement that introduces the topic of the development theories, which is modernization and decolonial. And then we're going to define what development is and why these two theories are important, right? I'm still in the introduction. We're also going to state the purpose of the essay, the assignment, right? So you need to explain modernization theory and the colonial theory, as well as the historical context. Okay, so state the purpose of the essay or the assignment. Okay, maybe for example, you can say, maybe for introduction, I can introduce it and be like, so the field of development studies is characterized by a range of theories, right? We have covered these theories, but as much as we have covered so many theories, the topic only wants you to talk about two. So the field of development studies is characterized by a range of theories that seek to understand and address global inequality. Okay? This essay will explain modernization theory and decolonial theory, analyzing the specific historical, political context from which they emerged, from which they were formed, and highlighting their contrasting approaches to development. So your introduction doesn't have to be so long, okay? Just you introducing development theory and defining and stating the purpose of the essay or your assignment. Then you go to your body name. So each paragraph should present and expand on one key idea. Okay, and you can't have paragraphs that are more than 10 lines. That is too long for a paragraph. Okay, you need to make it easy for someone that's reading your assignment. Okay, so each and every paragraph must present an argument, must present an idea. When you write it too long now, it makes you look like, okay, you don't know, you're just rambling, you don't know what you're talking about. Or you just copied and pasted, even though you didn't copy and paste, because it's not easy to follow. Okay, so you need to make sure that your paragraphs are not too long. Name? So each paragraph should present and expand on one idea. And the first part of the body should be maybe dedicated to explaining modernization theory and its context. Remember, we're getting snippets of what modernization theory is about. So that paragraph will be about modernization theory. And then the second paragraph will be about the colonial theory and its context. Okay, so I'm giving you the idea of modernization theory, and the second paragraph, I'm giving you an idea of the colonial theory. So each paragraph should be more and more specific while building your argument. Okay, remember, you should be specific. You can't go haywire. Okay, and then once you're done with the body, you conclude. since you were getting snippets of the modernization theory, snippets of the colonial theory, you were building the body. Remember when we started, we built the body of one, and then we built the body of two. And then once we got that, we write now. We build arguments step by step. So now, in conclusion, you're going to summarize those arguments. You understand? You're going to summarize those arguments. Your arguments are your key points. So you're going to summarize them. Okay? So you're going to summarize your main points without introducing new information. So when your lecturer goes to conclusion, if you are talking about inequality, right? If you're talking about inequality, they can't go to conclusion and find new arguments now in the conclusion. Maybe sometimes we'll be like, okay, but I was still talking about inequality in the conclusion, but this is a new argument. You understand? It's a new argument. Let's take you were talking about, for example, we're talking about GBV, right? That, okay, every day in South Africa, a woman is abused, okay? Every day in South Africa, maybe that's one key point. A woman is abused. The second point is that every day in South Africa, a child is kidnapped. That's my second point. And then these are my two key points. Then when you go to conclusion now, you talk about, okay, every day in South Africa, what can you say? Something that is new. You are no longer talking about, you are no longer summing up the points of a woman is abused, a child is kidnapped. Now we are talking about every day in South Africa, women are not getting enough jobs. You understand? That is part of GBV because men are hiring each other. You know, something that is so different from what you spoke about. It's you're not going to get marks on that. So whatever you conclude on should be based on your arguments, should be based on your body. Okay? No new information in the conclusion. So you need to just repeat the core differences between the two theories. Since today we're talking about modernization theory, so you're just going to reiterate the core differences or the two differences between the modernization and the colonial theories. And then you must end your conclusion with a strong and final statement that provide a definitive answer or concluding thought. Okay? So no new points. You need to highlight the differences between the two theories, and then you need to end your what do you call it? You need to end your essay with a strong final statement. Okay? But then you can ask yourself, why should I even include a cover page and a table of contents? That's just going to take so much of my time. Okay? You need those things. You need to support what your lecturer say. So the technical and professional requirements of assignment are important. Okay? And also, before we go forward, referencing, okay. Before we go forward, just so we cover these, we repeat these, you need to make sure that your cover page, your table of contents, and your cover page, don't submit it without the information that is required. You need to also make sure that in your introduction, you introduce, you define, and then you state the purpose of your essay, whatever topic you chose. Okay, so you introduce, you define, and then you state the purpose. And then in your body, okay, you need to have parts of your body. So you need to have part 1, part 2, part 3. It doesn't matter, but make sure that if it's part 1, then that will be one argument. If it's part 2, introduce the second argument now. If it's part 3, introduce the third argument. Okay? So these strong arguments, you need to build them step by step. Then when you go to the conclusion, you will check, oh, I have 5 arguments. Now I need to conclude on these 5 arguments. I need to summarize the key points on these 5 arguments. No new information in the conclusion. Okay? And then you need to end your conclusion with a strong statement. Okay, fine. Now you are done with your assignment. Or you are not certainly done, but you have written your introduction, you have written your body, you have written your conclusion. Okay? Nowadays there's ChatGPT and AI and all that. Some of the students just go and copy, cut and paste, and say, my assignment won't even take time. I mean, there's ChatGPT to help me. That is plagiarism and is academic dishonesty because you didn't do the work. You just went, copied and pasted. Okay? So you need to use AI in a good manner. Times are changing, right? Times are changing, yes, but you need to read. You can't just go to ChatGPT or to any whatever AI software and copy and paste. That is academic dishonesty. And if you are found, you can be expelled. Imagine being expelled because you were lazy to read a journal for a 3-page assignment. So you need to check. There's so many journals that you can read online. There's books that you can go to a library and quote and get information or arguments to support your essay. Online, if you went to Google Scholar and just type in your topic, most of the journals that are supporting your essay will come out. So you just need to read and select the arguments that support your topic. So don't be lazy. So plagiarism is academic dishonesty, and as a student, you can be expelled for doing that because universities need to keep they need to keep their names clear. Universities can't have students that don't know anything. You understand? Since you are UNISA students, you are ambassadors of UNISA. So when you go to workplaces and you have passed with flying colors, but you can't present yourself there, what does it mean? It means UNISA students they're just using AI. They can't even present themselves. Now is the university's name being tarnished. So we need to protect that and protect yourself also. Okay? All right. So plagiarism and referencing, very important in your assignments. When you plagiarize, it means you are using someone's work or someone's words without giving them credit, which is not okay. So your tutorial letter is very clear that you must acknowledge any information you use from a published source, right? When you go to these journals and get information, you need to make sure that the information that you are citing or the information that you are using, you include in-text citation. All right, you acknowledge that scholar. Okay, so whether you are quoting directly, paraphrasing, or simply just taking an idea from that scholar, you need to make sure that you acknowledge whoever ideas is there. Which referencing style does UNISA use? It uses Harvard, It uses Harvard referencing style, and that is set out also in your tutorial letter. So now, how do you avoid plagiarism? So To avoid plagiarism, you need to use direct quotations. Okay, so by using quotation marks and citing the author, right? That's how you avoid plagiarism. So you can't just go to a scholar, copy that line that was written by Mashiane 2024. You just copy it like that. You don't even acknowledge that Mashiane wrote this. You make it your own when you haven't published anything. That is wrong, and that is part of plagiarism. Ne? So you need to make sure that when you use direct quotation, you are going to, of course, use the exact words of that same scholar. Ne? And then when you use the exact same words, you are going to use quotation marks. Okay, so you're going to use quotation marks on the sides to show that this is not my words, but another scholar's words. Ne? And then you're also going to cite. So you're going to use in-text citation. Okay? For example, okay, let me just move. This is on the way. Okay, so for example, if you're making a certain argument in your body, you can say the study guide notes that the concept of development, you see that the quotations there, those are quotation marks, you see them. So the concept of development are heavily influenced by issues of subjectivity. So I have used these quotation marks because these are not my own words. I have just copied or used the exact words of whoever the scholar is, exactly as they are, and then I put them inside the quotation, the quotation marks. But I don't just put them inside the quotation marks. I need to acknowledge who that person is. What do? I use in-text citation, right? In brackets, the person who said these exact words is Carrie Alder, 2016, page 13, just like that. You understand? That's how you use in-text citation. So if you just write without, if you use the exact same words without acknowledging the scholar, for instance, if you copy and paste that sentence, ne? You just copied and pasted the same as it is. You didn't even paraphrase. You didn't even paraphrase or anything. You just copied as is. When you put it on, turn it in, it's going to show that this scholar has written this in 2024. This was not Danisa who wrote this. Danisa copied, you know? So you need to make sure that you put them inside the quotation marks, and then you put in-text citation, the year as well as the page, just like that. And remember, there is a difference between Harvard and APA style of referencing. Ne? This is Harvard. This example that I've used here, this is Harvard. Ne? So please don't be confused. This is Harvard. How do you also avoid plagiarism? How more can you avoid plagiarism? You need to paraphrase, okay? This same sentence here about development, I can write it in my own words, okay? Of course, it's still Carrie Alder's information or Carrie Alder's idea, but I'm writing it in my own words. I'm paraphrasing it. It doesn't mean that when I paraphrase or write it in another way, now it's mine. I don't need to acknowledge the scholar. No, you still have to acknowledge the scholar. Okay? So you need to paraphrase. So use your own words as long as in-text citation. So as much as I use my own words, I need to, at the end, say these is Kara Alda, and it was written in 2016 in page 13. You understand? So you also need to acknowledge the scholar when you paraphrase. How else can you avoid plagiarism? This scholar here, Kara Alda, I also need to include him in the reference list, right? So all the sources that I'm going to use in the body of my assignment, right? I need to include the sources in alphabetical order in the reference list. You understand? So if I've used Kara Alda, I've used Mashiane, I've used Mohlanga, I've used Mulife, all those needs to go to my reference list. But they don't just go to my reference list. They need to be put in alphabetical order. Okay, so alphabetical order starts in A, B, C, D. So even when you write, you need to check. Danisa's surname starts with M, is Mohlanga. So M can't be before C, right? So we'll start with Kara Alda, and then followed by another surname, maybe Boshoff Albert, right? And then followed by Mohlanga, but it needs to be in alphabetical order. You can't start by M and end with C. That's how you lose marks. Okay, so make sure that you check that before you even submit your assignment. As you write, you need to check that. Okay. So as I said, our style of referencing will be Harvard, and that is how you're going to reference in the reference list. Okay, that's how you're going to put your scholars in the reference list. All right. That was
Sorry,
not a
Miss
hint.
Denise, I've
Okay.
answered it in the chat.
Oh, let me see. Because I've been moving, ne? Remember I said if I'm moving fast for you, you must stop me. So let's see in the chat. Okay, how do you reference the study guide in the in-text reference? Okay, please can you give me an example? Okay, how do I reference the study guide in the reference list? That's another person. Okay. Uh-huh. Let's see, you read the author of the book, which is Sabelo Ndlovu. Okay. There's other scholars published by the University of South Africa. The year is there. Okay. Correct. All right. Okay, let's continue. So someone can ask, what's the difference between in-text citation and referencing? Both these, you are acknowledging the authors, ne? But they are different. So in-text is inside the text, ne? Remember here, this is inside the text. So you can even say, according to Kara Alda 2016-13, the study guide notes that. But now, because you started with Kara Alda won't be inside the brackets now. You understand? Only the year and the page number will be inside the brackets. But Kari will be outside. So you will say Kara Alda and then open brackets and then 2016 and then the page number, close bracket. And then you continue with the text. But your text, you see your text starts with capital letter there. The T won't be in capital because now we started with Kara Alda. So it's going to be just the, which won't be in capital letters. You won't start, you start your sentence in capital letter, but when you are inside, you continue in small letter. Okay, so the in-text citations, this is a referencing inside the text name, but then referencing Referencing is whereby you put all those references you used in your body, all those scholars you used in the body under the bibliography, under your reference list. Okay, so you even saw in the chat someone said Ital. They didn't acknowledge, they didn't show all the scholars because Ital is also acceptable, right? But when you go to reference list, you can't use Ital because let's take there were 7 scholars that wrote that book, ne? And you're in text referencing. You can't when you are referencing for the second time now, you can't highlight all of them, you can't include all of them, but you will use etal. But when you go to the reference list, all of them needs to be shown that it was this and this and this and that. So that's the difference, ne? So in text, like here, Ndlovu et al., right? The other scholars are still inside here. They are acknowledged here under et al. For 2021. But when you go to the reference list, you're going to include all of them. You understand? Going to include, where did I go? Going to include all of them. All right? We're going to go to your, what do you call it? We're going to go to your study guide also so that you see the examples, name of how you should reference. So why do both quotation, I mean, why do you do both quoting and paraphrasing require citations? Because it's not your own words. You understand? It's not yours. Even if you know how to, let's take your topic is asking you about making scones. You already know how to make scones, but you need to go find a book that wrote about how to make scones, ne? Because now you are writing an assignment. So you need to go, we need to see that you do some reading as a student. So you need to go find a book that says how to make scones, and then you take that, what do you call it? You take that sentence of how to make scones, you put it in your assignment and say, Singram 2024 says this is how you make scones, even though you know. You understand? So some of the things, I know you know these things, but you still need to code them. You still need to paraphrase, you still need to acknowledge the scholars. So you can't say, I know this information, I can't paraphrase. That's wrong. You still need to include that. All right? Okay, so for your assignment, you need to check if everything that is required, right? The requirements of assignment, you need to check if everything is there. You understand? If you have written everything. That's why you have to use a checklist at the end. So you need to check, did I include the title page and table of contents? Yes. Was my assignment clear? And my writing was also clear and systematic? Yes. So before you submit your assignment, it's just a good idea to go through a checklist, right? To ensure you have met all the requirements. Someone can say, that's too much work. It's too much work. I don't have time for that. But this helps because it will make sure that you don't leave out anything. Remember, each and every mark counts. Name? So before you submit your assignment, have a checklist and go through the checklist to ensure that you have met all the requirements. This will help you catch any last minute error. You understand? So this should be your second eye. The checklist should be your second eyes. So it will help you catch any last minute errors and ensure your essay is of high quality. You understand? Also, when you using the checklist, you need to check the formatting of your assignment, okay? which is the title page, table of contents, clear writing. You need to check that. You also need to check the content of your assignment. Have you explained? Now, when you check the content, you can't check the content without double checking your topic. Remember, you can't go off topic, ne? Even the examples that you use must be exactly speaking of the topic. So now, because our topic was modernization and the colonial theory, we're going to check, have we explained modernization theory well? Did we even cite the scholars? Yes. Did we explain the colonial theory? Yes, we did. We even included in-text citations for each and every argument we made. We have cited. You understand? We have cited our arguments. Have you shown that you have read and understood the required material? Yes. How do you show that you have read? You need to acknowledge the scholars. You understand? You can't show that you have read the readings, such as your books and journals, if you didn't include the scholars. But once we see that no scholar was cited, it means you just copied and pasted, or that came from your head. You didn't even care to include the scholars. That's fail. That's total fail. So you're losing marks on something small. You understand? Or maybe sometimes you didn't even copy and paste, but you forgot. You forgot to include these. So you need to make sure that in your checklist, you check these things to say, have I cited? Have I shown that I've used, I've read? Yes. And then have I referenced? Woo! Oh, it jumped. How did it jump? Where am I? Sorry about that. It jumped on me. Okay. Here. Okay. Have I referenced? Sometimes you have referenced. You know, sometimes when you are writing an assignment or an essay, you just putting in a draft, you just putting references and say, okay, before I submit, I'm going to check my references. Then you forget and you have just put your references however. You didn't even check the alphabetical order of your references. You didn't even check if your in-text referencing are well written. You didn't even check if you have used the correct style, which is Harvard reference list. You understand? You didn't even check the spelling and spelling errors. So in your computers, you need to make sure that you use spelling errors, ne? Spelling and grammar errors. So you shouldn't do all these things when you have a computer to help you do that. So please activate grammar and spelling error so that it can check that all these are there. Okay. Was your work original? Yes, your work was original. So you need to check that if your assignment was written in your own words. Remember, for your whole assignment, you can't be using quotations. Quotations. That's copy and pasting. And that is not allowed. You understand? Maybe in a paragraph, you can quote maybe once or twice, to be safe, maybe once, and then other times you can paraphrase, you understand, and then you use your own words to show that, okay, you understand these in your own words. Remember, for you to show understanding, you don't have to sound like that particular book or that particular scholar. You need to show, how do you understand this idea, this argument in your own words? So your work, your assignment needs to be original. So paraphrase your work, né? Write them in your own words, and then use quotations maybe once in each paragraph. Some of the paragraphs you don't even have to use quotations. Don't say, Danisa said on each and every paragraph I must use quotations. No. paraphrase your work, write these in your own words, but still cite the scholar, still acknowledge the scholar, even though you have paraphrased, even though you have used your own words. That idea was not yours. So please still cite. And then in one of your paragraphs, you can use quotations. So since it's just 3 pages, maybe you can use 4 quotations in your whole assignment. You understand? Don't be copying and pasting. Let's go to your what do you call it? Your study guide, ne? Your tutorial letter. Let's go to your tutorial letter. Okay, so this is your tutorial letter 301, ne? You remember what I said? I said, please make sure that you go through it. All right? It's very short. It's only 36 pages, ne? Very short. So here on page 18, references and list of referencing. Okay, so it also says here, if you use information from a published source, whether it can be a book or an article or a journal in your assignment, right? You need to make sure that you acknowledge its origin, because if you do not, that's plagiarism. So this is important, right? Whether you use a quotation or paraphrasing, you need to acknowledge, okay? So giving references. When you use Harvard system to refer to a source, you have to write the following information in the body of the essay. The author's surname, right? So if your source is Danisa Muhlanga and that journal was written in 2024, you can't say, according to Danisa 2024, page 13. We don't use the first names, okay? We use the last name, which is the author's surname. So you're going to use the author's surname, the year in which the source was published, right? And the page number or page numbers in which the information appears on that source, whether it's a journal or a book. So no first names, okay? Am I making sense? All right, quoting directly. You remember what I said? Okay. When you are quoting directly, when you are quoting directly, you are using the exact same words as that source, ne? You are going to use these quotation marks. You see there, this whole sentence here it comes from a source. This was not paraphrased. It came as it is. That's why it's inside the quotation marks. That's what you must do as well, ne? And then at the end here, you cite the source, you include the year, and then 152, which is the page. Another thing that I can advise you, ne? Try to look for sources that are recent. You can't be using a source that was written in 1950. Is it still relevant to 2025? Maybe it is, but remember, each and every year, new scholars emerge, ne? New scholars emerge and they write new ideas, okay, about the same topic, maybe. If it's deforestation, new things happen every year. You understand? Things that were happening in 1950, maybe this time have worsened or this time have improved. So you shouldn't base all of your information in old scholars, ne? Try to look for recent scholars, maybe scholars that are less than 10 years. You understand? Yeah, that are within the 10 years time frame. Try to use those because they're still relevant today, but not those that were made before you were even born. You understand? try to at least use recent ones. I'm not saying those are not relevant, but most of them are not. Okay, they may still be relevant today, but there's new information that's written every year. So try to stick to within at least 10 years time frame. Okay, if you are using something old, it should really be something good that you couldn't find any relevant recent information about it. You understand? So please do that. Okay. All right. So here in quoting directly, they're saying there is no comma after the author's name. Ne? You see there, someone can say, oh, they forgot to put a comma, because remember, Harvard and APA style of referencing are different. In APA style, you put a comma there after McMichael. So you will say McMichael, comma, 2004. In Harvard, you don't put a comma after the author's surname. You don't put a comma, ne? You write it like that. And then there is no space between the colon after the date and the page number. So you see these are technical requirements. They add up to your assignment. If your lecturer sees that, okay, you didn't follow these simple technical requirements, they're going to give you less marks. You understand? If under technical requirements, if your rubric says technical requirement, you're getting 10, and in your whole assignment, in your in-text citations, you forgot about these technical requirements. Out of 10, he gives you 2. Lose how much marks you have lost? 8, just because of something small, right? So you need to make sure that you use your checklist to check, oh, this and this, I'm done with it. I've done it well. So the lecturer doesn't want any space between the colon after the date and the page number. I have done that. I didn't put any space. I just put the colon and the date. Sorry, I just put the date, the colon, and the page number without any space. And then the full stops appear after the brackets. You see that? The full stop will appear after the brackets, because this is a sentence, ne? After a sentence, you put a full stop. So if you forget to put a full stop, it means you're continuing with your argument. And then when we check, you didn't continue with your argument. That was the end of your argument. Then you lose marks because you didn't put a full stop. Something very small that makes us lose marks, ne? So please check that. Paraphrasing. If you do not quote directly, but paraphrase something that an author said, you will not use quotation marks. So you can't paraphrase, right, and use quotation marks, because let's take you paraphrase, right? Remember, paraphrasing, you're writing something in your own words, okay? But of course, you will acknowledge. So let's take you paraphrase, and then you put that paraphrasing in quotation marks. Then you put quotation marks inside. Then your lecturer wants to see, they want to refer to this idea that you're talking about, right? They copy that whole text that you paraphrased. They copy it, and then they go to your reference list. They check the link. The link of the journal takes them to that very same journal, and then they search. They search that exact text that you paraphrased, and then you put in the quotation mark. They don't find it. That means you are cheating. You understand? So you are losing marks because of something small. So when you paraphrase, make sure that you don't put that in a quotation in quotation marks. You just paraphrase because you're using your own words, but of course you're going to acknowledge the author. So don't make those small errors. All right. The author's surname forms part of the sentence and is therefore outside the brackets. This is not a direct quote. Okay, we've already spoken about that, but a summary of the main point made by McMichael, and therefore there are no quotation marks. Okay. All right. That's paraphrasing. So here you see this part. Development is now a private and global project. Someone paraphrased this, right? Then if you were to search these, they are not in the, you won't find this in the journal. You will find it written in the scholar's idea, but because you paraphrased, of course, when I search, I won't find it. But when I check, I will say, oh, okay, this part under page 52, I see where the student paraphrased. Okay, so references to articles. Ne? All right, so they say, let us pretend that we have read an article called Feeding Africa's Cities, the role, da-da-da-da. Okay, so this article appeared in journal called Africa Insight. Okay, so that's the name of the journal, Vol 22, and the issue number is 4. Okay, that's just an example. A reference to this article in the body of an essay will be the same as the book. You see there? So it's going to be Rogerson, 1992, page 229. So you're going to reference it like that, same as the book, right? Okay. So when you're referencing the article or a journal in the reference list or bibliography, ne? You need to make sure that you include the journal name, and this must be in italics. You see there, the journal is called Africa Insight. So this must be in italics. The journal name is Africa Insight. It must be in italics, as well as, let's see. So you're going to say SM Rogerson, and then you include, I want where it gives us the, what do you call it? The example of a reference list. Let's go to it so that I talk of something that you see, references to contributions in readers. Okay. Oh, by the way, before I go forward, sometimes we don't only reference or include inside in-text referencing for journals and for books. Sometimes we use reports, like the World Bank. Remember, we're talking about the World Bank, IMF. You're going to read these reports to support some of your arguments, So this is how you reference the report in the website, So it's going to be the World Bank. It was written in 2002, page 1. Reports are not normally big, you understand? So if I see a report that says 2002, page 3000, I know that you are cheating. So please make sure that your lecturer doesn't think this student is cheating because you didn't pay attention to certain things. Reports are normally short. You understand? Reports are normally short. So please make sure that your information is convincing to the person reading it. Okay. Okay, more than 2 authors. Okay, there's more than 2 authors. Okay, so it's going to be Porter and Lawler and Hackerman. All right, this is where you will, in your in-text citation, when you referencing for the second time, you're going to use et al. Okay. Are you guys still here? Okay, let's go to compiling a list of references. So they say at the end of an assignment, you need to list all the sources you used. You already know that, we covered that, So this is done in alphabetical order, right? According to author's surname. So it's going to be author's surname as well as their initial. Okay, so here, you remember I said let's go to something that we can all see as well as the examples. So here is page 23. So in reference list, ne? The way you need to reference, here it is. You see they started with M, P, and S. This is in alphabetical order, ne? So this is how you should reference. That's the example there. So the surname of the author is McMichael. Their initial is P. This was written in 2004. And then that's the title, this book. This is a book, Development and Social Change, A Global Perspective. It's a 3rd edition. It was published in London. And the name of the publisher is Pineford. So you need to make sure that you include the city of of where it was published, as well as the name of the publisher. Okay, so this one is Picker. It was published in Cape Town, and the name of the publisher is Struck. So you need to pay attention to these small things, ne? You need to pay attention to these small things. So go through these tutorial later when you are doing your checklist to ensure that whatever you wrote in your assignment is according to what the technical requirements want. Once you get all the technical requirements, you know that I have scored points. I have scored marks in technical requirements. Now the only marks that I need to score is my arguments based on the topic that the lecturer gave me. You understand? So score all the marks in technical requirements, no errors, start your assignment on time, and then don't do it in a rush, because if you do it in a rush, you're going to leave some of the things. So once you score all the technical requirements, you know that you have written everything well. The marks, the other marks now will come from your arguments. You understand? Singram?
So I have a question with regards to the referencing. With the essay that I chose, they did give us links to go and see, to get additional information for certain organizations like the UNDP, and then the WHO organization as well. But I just looked through everything and I don't find an author. So how do I reference the websites or even the in-text referencing for the website if there's no author?
Sorry, I was muted. So they gave you links where to find your arguments for your assignment. But when you go to
Yes.
it, there's no those links don't work. Is that what you're saying?
They do work. They have everything on it. It's just it says here it's the World Health Organization, and it basically just has a lot of information about who they are. But there's nothing that says who the author is for all 4 of the links.
Okay, so what you do in that case, when they give you links, of course, you're not only going to focus on the links. Of course, you're going to look for your other sources, right? But those ones are where you can find information for that particular topic. But where you don't find some of the information, you go broader than that. But now back to how do I now go about referencing the ones that they gave me as well? Just go to World Health Organization website, ne? You go to World Health Organization website and search that same report. Because normally in World Health Organization, IMF, they already have these in their website. So once you search that that article and then you find it, you now reference the website of that link. You understand, the website of that information. Okay, so you're going to reference the website of that information. Am I making sense, Singram?
So I just have to go and find the website that has the report and then find the information from there. Is that what you said?
Yes, let me go back to this. Where is it? Okay, so you see here the World Bank, ne? Let's say they gave me a link about the World Bank. I do find this information, but it doesn't say who the author of this information is. Sometimes these big corporations, they don't write the names because this is the company's work. So instead of you referencing the person who wrote the article, you're going to reference the company, which is the website of the company. So like here, okay? So website often provide the names of authors and sometimes even page numbers, okay? So in a case whereby it doesn't provide you that, you need to go to their website, okay? And reference their website and the year in which it was published. Instead of just focusing on that link, go to their website and search that same topic in their website and find the article and reference the website, okay, and the year which it was published. If also this fails, then you can also look for alternative scholars. You don't have to base all your information there, but it's important to also read about those links. Find information from those links because it's what's going to build on your argument, right? So for referencing, just go to their website and check the report that was given by the website and reference the website and the year. Okay? Any question?
Good day, ma'am. Good day, everyone. Ma'am, I wanna ask. It's not regarding this lesson. It's regarding about the declaration. Do we have the declaration form for the assessment 1 and 2?
I'll have to find out about that. I'll have to find out, ne?
Okay.
And then once I found out, I'm going to ask Miss Mashiani to alert you guys on via your portal. Okay?
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so next week, if you guys want to if there's somebody maybe who's confused about their assignment and they feel like, okay, maybe we can use that topic to break it down, right? Then please do send the topic to Ms. Mashiane and then we'll use that for next week, just in the beginning. But next week lesson will also cover exam prep. Ne? So we'll be covering those things that we're talking about, those engagements that we're talking about for the previous weeks, ne? Just to prepare you guys for your exams. Okay. Any questions? If there are no other questions, guys, we have come to the end of our session.